finally, the cab driver said, I really have to go home to Tunisia, which was 2 or 3 hours away with the cab. So he left me alone. And I said, hey, you cannot just drop me on the road in a town where I don't know anybody. So he dropped me at the police station, and I spent the night in a jail.
In this episode, I'm talking with alumni Hans Gut, who studied mechanical engineering at the ETH, then had a long career in business before leading Careum, a Swiss foundation promoting learning, training, and further education in healthcare for over 20 years. This is the We Are ETH podcast, and I'm Susan Kish, your host. Hans, how did you decide to go to the ETH way back when you were an undergraduate? Or were there any other choices?
No, actually, when I did my maturity, I didn't really know, what to study, but it was very clear that, I will have to study somewhere. That's what my parents kind of expected. And then, they sent me to a Berufsberater. How do you call this?
Sort of a career advisor?
Yeah, exactly. A career advisor. And as my marks in the Matura were pretty good in all the, math and physics and chemistry and those kind of topics, he suggested I should go to the ETH. And to me, that was okay. And I said, why not? I'm a boy. I like machines. And so that's how I decided to study mechanical engineering.
Did you study computers at all at that time, or sort of simple programming?
Computers almost didn't exist at that time, unfortunately. I started my studies 1970? Mm-hmm. Computers was really not a big issue at that time.
For those in the audience who are listening to podcasts and have the world at their hand with a mobile phone, what was it like? Where did you spend your time? Were you in labs? Were you in the library? Did you go to a coffee shop? What was your day like when you were a student then?
Well, the ETH at the time, it was really a school. It was not very different to the gymnasium.
Really?
Yes, we had to be there at 8 o'clock, and then there was a break an hour later and so on, and then it did go on.
This was before computers were ubiquitous. Computers probably were, the size of this room. They were big, right?
Absolutely.
Did you take any classes that caused you to work with your computers? And if so, how did you do that?
Well, we were forced to take computer classes.
Forced? It was required?
It was required. Yes, it was required. And, we had to write in this language, which was called... Pascal.
Pascal, right.
Pascal.
Right.
And at the time, I knew a little bit how to, to program, very, very simple tasks. Uh-huh. And then, you had these punch cards. And I remember the computer was at the Clausiusstrasse, and in the evening, a lot of ETH students were queuing up there to put their punch cards through the machine because this was a requirement to pass some exams and stuff.
Did you have to reserve a time, or how did you?
No,
or you just sort of grabbed a sandwich and went over there and stood in line?
Yes, you stood in line most of the time without sandwich, but and then you push the cards, those punch cards, into the machine. And if you were lucky, it printed out something which satisfied the professor. If you were not lucky, which happened a lot, at least to me, nothing came out.
How did you find a bug? If you had a problem in one of those punch cards, how could you figure out where the bug was?
Good question. I really don't remember, but it was very, very time-consuming, extremely time-consuming. I believe the computer, those were those papers which came out of the computers, mm-hmm. Those endless papers, and I think they indicated where the problem was, and you could kind of zoom in there and try to eliminate.
Figure out which command line.
Yes, yeah.
Didn't quite work, or where the logic was circular.
Yes,
whatever.
Something like that, yeah. But this is really a long, long time ago.
Have you ever learned to program since then, or played with programming?
No, that's not my forte at all.
You might be surprised. They're making, now that you've got ChatGPT, you just write in a few commands. Right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe I should should go to class again.
I think we all can do that. You studied the ETH. You studied successfully there, so you finished the years. Then what did you decide to do with a love of machines and doing well in those areas?
Well, actually, and this has a lot to do with the ETH. At the ETH, at the time, we had to do kind of apprenticeships in industry. And the two apprenticeships which I did, they became my future employer. The first one was really where I made my Diplomarbeit, my diploma work. The company was called Oerlikon Bürle.
Yeah.
It was a very large company with a big machine tool division, and I joined this machine tool division because that's what I studied, machine tools, how to build machine tools. But later in my life, I joined Maedler, today Maedler Toledo, and I got to know the people and they got to know me during my first internship. So that's why, the ETH really played a very, very important role in my choices for the job, because I got to know my future employers through the ETH.
And at these jobs in machine tools, did you design tools? Did you design machines? What did you actually do?
No, immediately after the ETH, I joined the sales department for machine tools. And that's something which interested me always a lot. And I had the opportunity, to travel a lot, which to me was very, very attractive.
And I'm assuming that was not just travel inside Switzerland.
No, that was not traveling at all inside Switzerland. They gave me all the kind of, very, very difficult countries. I had to travel through Africa, North Africa, all the Maghreb countries. I was responsible for the Middle East. But this was all very exciting for me. Those were countries which I didn't know. And
so this is Morocco and Algeria and
Tunisia. Yeah, and Egypt. Yes.
Egypt, this is Dubai before it was the Dubai we know what it is today.
Yeah, I didn't go to Dubai, but I went to Iran. That was a big country for us.
Very cool. And what were sales like in those days?
Well,
because you didn't have it, you couldn't sort of connect with them on LinkedIn and send them a note and say, I'm going to be in town, I'll stop by.
No, not at all. Actually, already the planning of the trips was, a challenge in itself. I mean, this was before, before emails and those kind of things. Just to make hotel reservations was very, very tricky.
Did you send letters? Or this is before fax machines, right?
Well, fax machines, no, they did exist. I mean, I'm old, but not so old. No, fax machines, they did exist, but, we hardly knew what kind of hotels were available. One time, that's kind of a story which I never forget. I was in Algeria and I had to travel to Libya. And at the time, there was no flight between those two countries, so I went with a cab, and I had no hotel reservation. And when I
you were winging.
Yeah, when I arrived, we went to all the hotels. This cab driver drove me to the hotels, and they were all fully booked. And finally, the cab driver said, "Yeah, I really have to go home to Tunisia," which was 2 or 3 hours away with the cab. So he left me alone. And I said, hey, I cannot just drop me on the road in a town where I don't know anybody. So he dropped me at the police station, and I spent the night in a jail. I mean, it was
because it had a bed.
It had a bed.
It was safe.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
It had,
No, it was a very, very different traveling than today.
That is a great story. And then when you went to Maedler Toledo, who I think of sort of more around precision instruments than I do around big tools.
Well, they became famous for their balances, which they did, where you can measure, all the way down to the millionth of a gram. And today they are very, very successful in all kind of equipment for the scientific laboratory.
And did you do sales there as well?
I joined Mettler Toledo, and actually, to me, it was very important because when I was with Oerlikon Bührle, I asked Oerlikon Bührle whether they would support me if I did a business study. And they said, okay, you can do that, provided that you come back and that you assume this and this position. So
you went to Stanford?
Yes, I had an opportunity to go to Stanford. And when I came back, the job they wanted to give me didn't exist anymore. Because they kind of restructured everything. And they said, now, you have to join our military division. And I said, no, I don't want to join this military division. That's really not where I want to spend.
Military division, that translates to selling guns?
Selling guns, yes. Anti-aircraft guns.
Okay, I can see.
Yes.
Yeah, that could be a problem.
Yeah, it was a problem to me. And they were very, very generous. They said, okay, we understand this is really not your fault. You can leave if you want to leave. And I made an ad in the Neue Zürcher Zeitung, where I said I'm a Diploing ETH, and also that I have a Master in Science of the Stanford University. And at that time, this was very, very exclusive. And I got, really tons of offers. And the people at Mettler Toledo, they saw that as well. And they called me and they said, are you this Hans Gut who, did his internship 10 years ago or something? And I said, yeah, it's still me. And they desperately wanted me to join Mettler Toledo. And that's how I got there.
That is a wonderful story. Now, tell me, when you put the ad in the NZZ saying, bright young man,
wow.
Got an ETH degree and an MBA from Stanford, which was a big deal. Was it on the Sunday issue or like the Wednesday issue, or did you run it many days?
I really don't know anymore. But I guess at the time, they had lots of advertisements for jobs. I mean,
But usually it was for jobs, not candidates.
Yeah, no, true.
Was it both sides?
Yes, no, true. But I really can't tell you where I put it. It's somewhere in the Neue Zürcher Zeitung, and the reactions, they were, surprisingly high.
That's fabulous. And you put your phone number and your home address so people
would
write you?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Different times.
They were different times. So you're at Mettler Toledo, and what do you do there?
At Mettler Toledo, the boss was the guy whom I got to know when I did my internship. And he said, you tell me what you want to do. And I said, well, I want to have direct responsibility for P&L and all those kind of things. Then he said, oh, okay, why don't you build up a separate sales company for the Swiss market? The sales for Switzerland were kind of included in corporate headquarters. And there was no separate organization for Switzerland, but we had separate organizations for France and England and America and so on. So I could build up this Sales Switzerland company, which was very, very interesting and very, very exciting. And after, I think, 2 or 3 years, they had an emergency in the United States with the sales company over there. And they asked me whether I was willing to go to the US. And then, obviously I had to talk to my wife, and we were both excited about this opportunity. And basically within 2 weeks, I had to fly to the United States and take over the organization in the United States.
Oh, now that's cool. Now, did you go back to Palo Alto,
no,
or where did you land?
No, we were extremely fortunate because the headquarters of Mettler US was right next door to Princeton, New Jersey. And we bought a house in Princeton, and we really loved to live there.
That's a beautiful area.
It is. And we were so openly, received over there. And also the city of Princeton, a lot of very, very interesting people are living there. And they were, so friendly and so open to us. So we got many friends, and we were immediately totally, involved and accepted in Princeton.
So your kids went to school, to the public school, the local school?
Yes, they did.
So they ended up being effectively bilingual then?
Yes, totally. When they talked among themselves, they talked English.
Fabulous. That's great. So this sounds very idyllic. You're living in the green belt around Princeton with brilliant people from all over the world, working for Mettler-Toledo, a very generous employer. What happened after that?
Then I was moved back to Switzerland after, it was kind of a turnaround situation in the United States. And after everything was stable again, basically I informed Mettler-Toledo, the corporate management, that I wanted to stay in the US because we liked it so much. And I told them that, I'm going to look for a job in Boston. That was kind of our, dream location. But they didn't want to let me go, and they said, "Hey, how about if you could join our kind of the executive committee in Switzerland of Mettler-Toledo?" And they offered me a job which I just couldn't refuse. So we decided, to move back, and then I became a member of the group executive board and was responsible for the laboratory division, which at the time was the largest division of Mettler-Toledo.
All right, so they gave you a job. They made you an offer you couldn't say no to. How long did you stay doing that?
Well, then maybe I made a mistake, maybe not. But anyway, a headhunting company contacted me and asked me if I wanted to become the CEO of a public company in Zurich called Seal. It's a paper company. And Seal was, they claimed, the oldest company in Switzerland because they started to manufacture paper, when
in the Middle Ages?
Yes, with the Reformation, when they wanted to print new Bibles and those kind of things.
So Martin Luther wrote his commandments on seal
exactly.
paper?
No, then I joined Seal. But after, maybe a half year or so, I realized that this company was very, very, very sick. And then, I had to do a lot of things which I really didn't like to do, lay off a lot of people. Seal had quite a few subsidiaries in Europe, particularly in Germany, but they were all losing money. And it was really kind of a horrible situation for me. And after 3.5 years, I quit Seal again. And then, I had the great opportunity to join Careum.
So you really didn't like the radical destruction that was needed to... Did you have, when you left, were they in better shape?
Yes, they were maybe in better shape, but not in good shape. Right. Like
that must have been frustrating.
Stock price was under a lot of pressure, and the mood in all the different companies of the Seal Group was not good at all, because whenever I visited a company somewhere, basically my message was we have to lay off another 10% of all the employees or whatever.
So you were not their favorite visitor?
No, definitely not. And I believe, there are people, I know a few of them, they kind of do those kind of jobs, and they even like to do those kind of jobs. But I'm definitely not one of them. I'm not the born turnaround manager.
What did you learn from those years?
I got to know me a lot better, because I really had to go through very, very difficult times, very difficult meetings, and so on. With your co-workers, you have very intense relations during such a crisis, and from some of the people, you become very, very close friends because you could trust them. With other people, it was kind of the opposite. You never knew what's going on behind your back. But for me, I learned that I never want to be again in such a situation. To me, it was also very important that, I had my family who understood that I'm maybe sometimes tired or in a bad mood or whatever. And very often I just wasn't home, or I came home, at 10 o'clock at night or whatever. But my big luck was, Seal had a lot of real estate. Really a lot, very, very expensive real estate. And the company which afterwards became Careum also had a lot of real estate. And they asked me whether I wanted to join their board, because they thought that I was that I had some know-how.
Real estate magnate?
Yeah, exactly. And then when I left Seal, I was on the board of Careum, which at that time was not named Careum, it was the Rotkreuzspital. And they lost the permission to operate as a hospital exactly at the time when I joined them. And then the board asked me whether, I was willing to kind of organize a restart of this foundation. And as the timing was kind of
optimal,
optimal for me, I said, yes, certainly, I do that.
But did you know anything about medicine or hospital management or any of the related disciplines? Because it did a lot of nursing training, right?
I probably knew maybe equally as much as you do. I don't know. I was never...
One knows something as a patient, but that's different.
Okay. Well, it's different, but important too. Important too. I mean, the answer is no, I didn't. I had no particular idea about hospital management or, school management and so on. But I think, this foundation was financially totally independent. The foundation had money.
So it had an endowment.
Yes.
It had assets.
Yes.
There was some kind of cash flow.
Absolutely. The foundation was 125 years old when I joined. And during that period of time, a lot of people, before they passed away, they gave money to our foundation. That's why, we have
smart.
A lot of very, very nice real estate in the city of Zurich. And I had kind of great opportunities to build up something from scratch because I also had the money. What I did, because I knew that I had kind of no big idea about healthcare and whatever this foundation was doing. So I had the opportunity to find the best people. I think I had a good hand in finding the right people and building really successful, powerful teams. And that's why maybe in the final analysis, it wasn't a catastrophe that I didn't know really healthcare, because I had the people around me who knew very, very well what it all means.
So I'm going to ask you 3 questions to close that we try to ask each podcast. The first one is, what is your favorite place at the ETH and in Zurich? What is a place that you visualize and love to go back to?
In Zurich, it's maybe, I'm a member of the Zürcher Yacht Club. That's this house which is, in the water. It's actually swimming in front of the Tonhalle, which is a extremely, extremely beautiful location if you like Zurich, because you kind of see Zurich from there. At the ETH, it's hard to say. The ETH Terrasse is beautiful. It's not very important in my life, but whenever I'm there, I kind of enjoy the view.
When you were a little boy and you were thinking about growing up, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, I believe I wanted to be somehow successful. Maybe also I wanted to be, a little bit relevant for whatever I was doing. I believe I always wanted to have a family. I wanted to have, and I do have, good friends. And
so you didn't want to be an astronaut?
No, I wanted to be a pilot. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be a pilot, and it's funny. I had the permission to fly before I had the permission to drive.
Huh? Because so you have a pilot license?
I had. I had a pilot with 17 years old, and at that time, or still, you have to be 18 to start to drive cars.
I understand. And what are you curious about? What are you learning about today? What books are on your bookshelf? Or podcasts do you listen to?
Podcasts, actually, not very many, but that's something my children always tell me I should do. You know, when you drive with your car somewhere. Mm-hmm. The last book I was reading which was kind of fascinating, was a book called Spy and Traitor. That's the story of a spy who worked first against the West and then for the West, because what's going on in the Ukraine and our conflict with Russia, and so you understand it better when you read that book.
It feels more relevant.
Yeah, and what's going on, behind the scene, which we don't see and which we don't hear, it's incredible, and that is what is written in that book.
Hans, thank you so much for your time. This was a great conversation and a great story. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to all the other stories. I always I enjoy very much listening into your broadcasts.
I'm Susan Kish, host of the We Are ETH series, telling the story of the alumni and friends of the ETH Zurich, the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, based in Zurich. ETH regularly ranks amongst the top universities in the world with cutting-edge research, science, and people. The people who were there, the people who are there, and the people who will be there. Please subscribe to this podcast and join us wherever you listen, and give us a good rating on Spotify or Apple if you enjoyed today's conversation. I'd like to thank our producers at ETH Circle and LE Media, and thank you, our listeners, for joining us.